Pop my Zen in for this. Nicotine. So normally my videos are a lot more polished, but I wanted to try something different, something a little bit more casual. Earlier this year, my girlfriend and I built and launched a product for OnlyFans management agencies called Harpoon. Before you click off, don't worry, this isn't an advertisement or anything like that. We are actually sunsetting Harpoon for now, for reasons that I'm going to explain later in the video. But I learned so much, and I enjoyed the experience so much of building a product for OnlyFans managers that I wanted to make a video explaining what I learned and why I think basically every agency should at least think about starting a B2B product or service in this industry. If it's your first time here, my name is Francis. I am the founder of Milky Media, says it right here on the hoodie, which is an OnlyFans consultancy, product developer, and former management agency that has produced millions of dollars, millions of followers, and billions of views on social media for OnlyFans creators and agencies around the world. And throughout my career, I have built and launched much bigger projects than Harpoon outside of the OFM industry. But what made Harpoon special to me, what makes it special to me, is that it was just a hobby project or like a thought exercise that my girlfriend and I came up with and created as a team of two. And we spent no more than a few $100 buying the website. I think it was like $300 or $400 in total. Just buying the website, putting all the infrastructure in place. And our goal was basically to see, could we start a business with absolutely no resources? And I think it was a tremendous success because within 6 months of operation, Harpoon has already generated over $1 million in revenue for our customers. And we walked away with just under $50,000 in profit from sales of the product. And this is a company that we built zero resources, profitable day one. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that like 50K in profit is even remotely impressive. On the management side, I've made that much in 1 week. But I learned a ton of lessons about business and about OnlyFans management that I would never have learned otherwise. And I just want to share kind of what we got right, what we got wrong, and some of our biggest learnings from the experience of developing a totally novel product for the digital intimacy ecosystem. Managing models, obviously very lucrative, but from my perspective, the problem with managing models is it depends entirely on a platform and on other people that you don't own, that you can't control, and it feels really good to just build and own something, even if it's relatively small. So here's my argument for why I think everyone should build a product in the OFM or digital intimacy ecosystem. First of all, the backbone of OFM is independent product developers. So for all of the, all the bugs and problems and headaches that they might bring with them, think about how different your business looks without CRMs like Inflow or Super Creator. Like at the most basic level, it's really hard to imagine how you could trustlessly scale a chat operation without a way to give like limited permissioned access to chatters. The OPSEC implication of giving any chatter like full access to model accounts is that you're basically one disgruntled Pakistani away from your top model's account getting deleted. And that is totally disregarding like all of the other business critical and convenience features that CRMs have, like KPI dashboards and leaderboards and customer tracking and automatic bump messaging. Like these are incredibly useful, sophisticated products, and I think they deserve recognition. And all of them came from the same thing, which is someone recognized a problem in this industry, they created a solution, and they productized it. And the essence of capitalism is discovering a way to solve people's problems and then monetizing the solution. It's a very young industry, and I think that makes it a gold mine for creative problem solvers for a few reasons. First, there's tons of unsolved problems and areas of opportunity in OFM. Harpoon was a totally novel solution to the problem of lack of owned media and direct marketing in OFM. And another example of an unsolved problem that's just like waiting for a solution is something like functional tracking links or like good attribution for OnlyFans. Because the native tracking links, we all know, they're notoriously inaccurate, they're dog shit. And that makes like figuring out where your traffic is actually coming from and determining the efficacy of your marketing campaigns is really hard to do. And that makes it really hard to make business decisions on top of. And there's dozens of problems like this in the industry for which people would happily pay very well for a solution. The second thing is that even in areas where solutions have been developed, like that already exist, there's still substantial room for innovation and like niching down. So in the case of like CRMs, Inflow has a huge majority of market share. Basically, all of us have used Inflow at some point or probably actively are using Inflow. But there's companies like Super Creator that are competing with Inflow by integrating AI chatbots directly into their CRM platform. And that makes them a much more compelling CRM solution for like independent models, or agencies that are looking to downsize their human chat teams, people who have a lot of time wasters, people who run a lot of free pages. Like all of those people, I think Super Creator is a better product for them than Inflow might be. And companies like OnlyFans API are giving agencies who want to like custom build their own CRMs with whatever features and automations that they want, the ability to do so. So there's tons of room for innovation. And then the third thing is that OnlyFans management is an incredibly high margin, high cash flow business. Like all of us are making really good money with really high profit margins for the most part. And there's tons of young entrepreneurs who are relatively inexperienced in their entrepreneurial journey, and they're more than happy to pay big fat premiums to have their problem solved so that they don't have to like figure shit out themselves. And in many cases, maybe even in most cases, this is their first business. You know, this might be your first business. And you're thinking on your feet and you're learning all of the hard lessons of entrepreneurship while you're also operating your companies. And my experience has been that OnlyFans managers are awesome customers. They're super grateful that somebody is providing a solution to their problems. And they typically don't blink for relatively high ticket purchases. Case in point, you know, Harpoon's highest subscription tier was $2,000 a month. And we had a bunch of customers that were willing to pay that because they were interested in generating traffic and owned media. I think a lot of entrepreneurs in OFM have very similar origin stories. Like we all come into the business in a somewhat similar way, but we all have a variety of backgrounds. We all have a variety of perspectives and experiences and like past career things that we've done in our lives. And the synthesis of those things can result in profoundly useful ideas. And in an industry that is this immature, there's a very good chance that you see something, that you recognize something that other people don't or haven't. And no matter how small your agency is, you might just have an idea that's valuable. And it's way easier than you probably think to turn that idea into money. And even more importantly, share that value, share that solution with other people who need it. Think about the problems that you encounter every day in your business. Develop a solution for that problem, use it internally. That's what Harpoon was, and I'll explain that in just a second. And if that solution works for you and your agency, there's a really good chance that it's going to work for other people too. And from there, it's just a matter of productizing it. That is to say, like packaging it, marketing it, and selling it in a way that is scalable and useful for other businesses. That's capitalism in a nutshell, right? So that's kind of my elevator pitch on why you should think about building a product. And what I want to do now is explain exactly what Harpoon was, you know, the problem that it was trying to solve, and the most important things that we learned from that experience that you can use to assist in your product development journey. And ultimately, also at the very end, I'm going to explain why we chose to wind things down. The fundamental problem that Harpoon was trying to solve is a majority of OnlyFans revenue comes from whales, right? We all know this. These are the guys that are looking for that more intimate, romantic girlfriend experience. And a whale might have like 5, 10, maybe even 20x the average lifetime value of a normal quote unquote fan. And these people, we know that they're willing to spend thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars in a relatively short time period on the models. The whale phenomenon is extremely well established. It's very well known. Some people call it Pareto distribution, like however you want to frame it. We all know what whales are. And the problem that we recognized is that there's no way to actually identify a whale until they're already subscribed to the model's page and your chatters are talking to them. So the question that we wanted to answer was something like, is there a way to actively, hunt whales? Is there a way to identify them before they ever subscribe to your model's page? And if so, is there a way to market to them directly? What might that look like? And so Harpoon started as this sort of simple 2-part thought exercise. First, what are like the shared attributes that existing whales, like the whales that are already subscribed to my model's account, what do they have in common? And then how could I measure those attributes to create like an actionable psychological model of them? And then the second question that we wanted to ask is, if we can create that model, can we devise a way to identify potential whales before they subscribe and then market to them directly? And the first part was simple. It's already a very well-known, very intuitive way to collect data on people, which is just surveying. I love surveys. I don't have any formal education. I didn't go to college, but I do have like a hobbyist level interest in psychometrics. And so I incidentally knew a fair amount about surveying and experiment design. And so we started by analyzing chat logs with some of my top spenders, guys who would spend 10, 20, 30, 40 grand on a model's account. And we ran those chat logs through ChatGPT to search for recurring words, phrases, sentiments, and like concepts. And these insights, the insights that we gleaned from that became the basis of the initial survey that we developed. So basically, we're just asking what are the right questions to determine like predisposition towards behaviors that are associated with whales: romanticism, loneliness, and obviously compulsive spending. And then the next challenge was, how do we give people a survey without like them realizing that they're being surveyed? Basically, how do we make them participate in an experiment without making them feel like lab rats? And coincidentally, before my girlfriend and I met, we had both independently been working on a dating survey, like a boyfriend, or in her case, a boyfriend application, in my case, a girlfriend application. And we thought, if a subscriber thought that taking this survey that we developed would give them a chance to date the model, there's a really good chance that they'd be willing to volunteer all sorts of information, all sorts of data points about themselves, including contact information, and then we could use that to build a behavioral model. So after a few months of tinkering, giving different iterations of the survey to subscribers, we were able to pretty reliably quantify, measure, and predict whale behavior. But that alone still wouldn't have been that useful as a product, because it doesn't drive new traffic, it doesn't increase LTV on your existing whales, like they've already spent money. It's just reinforcing kind of what we already know about whales who have already spent. So now we had to figure out how to survey people who aren't paying subscribers so that we could apply this behavioral model to them. And then furthermore, after we identify potential whales, how could we contact them to push them to become paying subscribers? And basically, we just repackaged the boyfriend application, except this time, instead of sending it to subscribers, we just put it in the model's link in bio on Instagram, and then we push traffic to it with like story posts and reels. And this worked insanely well. In our initial test, within, I think, 24 hours of publishing the boyfriend application link, we had over 2,000 applications for one model. And that's 2,000 potential whales that are all just primed to spend. So now we have a functional, psychometrically valid model for whale behavior. We've identified the whales. And the last piece of the puzzle is, how do we actually push them to spend money? How do we get them on the OnlyFans page? And I have a background in business development and sales for both B2B and direct-to-consumer products. And so I was super comfortable with email campaigns, and that's what we ended up settling on. And it worked really well. And this is what I mean by synthesizing your experiences to produce something original. Harpoon is a very simple idea. I don't think like once you understand the concepts, it's like, well, yeah, of course that would work. But I'm not sure that anybody else would have thought of it. And I'm not saying that to like, I don't have a big ego about it or anything. But I think that my interest in psychometrics, my focus on organic social media and parasocial relationship development, and then my experience with email-driven marketing, along with my partner's experience in those things, those were all necessary components of Harpoon. And while none of those things is particularly unique to me or us, it's the synthesis of all of those things in the specific context of OFM that's unique. And that became the product. And by the conclusion of the first test, we had over like 6,000, I think, unique respondents to the boyfriend application. And after our email campaigns, 1,500 of those respondents became paying subscribers. And those 1,500 subs ended up producing over $200,000 in net revenue for an average LTV of, I think that works out to about $150 per person. And like for reference, I'm sure you know this already, but the industry average LTV for paid page subs is generally between like $30 and $50. For some people, it's even less. So that's between 3 and 5x the average LTV. Pretty fucking good. So that's Harpoon's origin story in a nutshell. And now what I want to do is share some of the most important lessons that we learned from our experience that you can hopefully apply to your own product development journey. When Super Creator reached out to me asking me to test out their CRM along with their integrated AI chatbot, Izzy, I didn't expect much. I've been very skeptical of AI chatting. I assumed that LLMs would hallucinate and create continuity issues, that the conversations would be low quality, and most importantly, that an AI would never be able to outperform human chatters when it comes to sales, which is what matters most. And on all three of these counts, I was dead wrong. After completing the onboarding process, where Super Creator ingests every detail about your model from eye color to conversational style, I personally tested Izzy on a free page with over 80,000 subscribers, and I was absolutely blown away. Izzy not only flawlessly imitated the model's personality and texting style, it had context-sensitive conversations with zero hallucinations, with over 2,000 fans in a single day. And it sold more PPVs in that first 24 hours than I had sold on that page in the previous 3 months combined. And that's not a fluke. There are over 25,000 creators and agencies that are using Super Creator today. And Izzy has sold over $180 million of PPVs since its release just a few months ago. If you followed me for a while, you know that I only advocate for products that Milky actually uses and believes in. And Super Creator falls firmly into that category. So if you're an agency that's looking to dramatically cut chatting costs without sacrificing chat quality or revenue, Izzy is the solution. And I strongly recommend that you check it out today. And they're giving my viewers an insane deal. If you click the first link in the description and use promo code Francis at checkout, you will get 30% off plus 2,000 free AI messages to see for yourself just how powerful Izzy is. Now, back to the video. First thing is you can just make things. Your product does not need to be perfect on day one. It doesn't need to be built from scratch either. It just needs to provide value and it needs to be usable for your customers. And between automation platforms like Zapier and Make.com and these incredibly powerful AI tools like ChatGPT and Replit that we have now, it has never been easier to build custom software. You don't need to hire like a team of developers anymore. Whatever you're making, there's a really good chance that somebody has already built some of that like underlying infrastructure or machinery for you. And even if not, today's no-code tools are sophisticated enough that you can probably build most of it through just like plain text prompting. So there's no excuse not to get started. If you have a good idea, just try to build the most like bare bones version of it possible for yourself. And if it works, you can worry about making it pretty and streamlining it for your customers when you productize it. I remember when I first got serious about OFM, Shane Francis, Shane, you're a G, if you're watching this, God bless you. He had a Reddit post automation tool. So you could just schedule like a Reddit scheduler basically that didn't exist at the time. But it required like 3 or 4 third-party downloads. It had this like hour-long walkthrough video or like this whole like info page that you had to read and watch. And I had to like separately purchase cloud compute to use it. It reminded me a lot of trying to figure out how to like pirate software when I was a kid, and like you know get the little keyloggers and stuff. But anyway, kind of nostalgic. But that's an aside. From a user experience perspective, that tool was a colossal pain in the ass. I hated every second, but I was still happy to pay for it because it solved the problem for me. Most people in OFM are just happy to have their problem solved. And while you should absolutely, my opinion is that like I'm a customer first sort of product developer. While you absolutely should make your product simple to use for your customer and you should improve it over time, you don't need like ultra glossy Apple quality UI, UX the day that you launch your product. As long as it works and it provides value for the user that's greater than what they paid for it without causing too many headaches, you're good in my book. Lesson 2 is pricing. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time here because in my opinion, pricing is one of the most fascinating subjects in business, especially when you're talking about a totally new product, which Harpoon was. So when you're competing in an existing market where people are like accustomed to paying within a certain price range, you can generally price on like a relative basis. So streaming video is a good example. It doesn't matter what services you're subscribed to. You know that streaming video is, quote unquote, worth between like $12 and $20 per month. But Harpoon, again, totally new product, no competitors. So we had to figure out pricing from first principles. And there's many, many factors that come into play regarding price. I think the biggest ones are, one is going to be your overhead costs, obviously. Like how much does the product or service cost you to produce? And in order for your business to be profitable, there obviously has to be a gap between costs and revenue, ideally in your favor. Now, in some cases, you don't necessarily have to have margin. Like if you're optimizing for rapid growth, sometimes keeping money in the business or operating at a temporary loss is not just okay, but the objectively correct decision. But for us, again, this is more of a hobby project, so we wanted to be profitable day one. That was our goal, so that's how we priced. The second element of pricing is competition. And in our case, we had no competitors since Harpoon was the first product of its kind. And monopolies are great, but they're also very rare. So I'm going to assume that whatever your product is, you don't have a monopoly. And quick note on this. It's really important to set prices with knowledge of your competitors' pricing, but you should not aim to compete purely on price. And what I mean by that is if company A and company B offer totally identical products, the consumer is obviously just going to buy from whoever's cheaper, right? And that puts both companies in a really shitty position because the only option that they have to remain competitive is to just reduce prices back and forth. And the only way that they can innovate is by trying to reduce costs, which is like that's not where you want to be. This is called racing to the bottom. And instead, you should compete on unique features or functionality or having really exceptional customer service. So if you have a better service than your competitors, you should charge more. And if the customer objects to that, then you just need to explain why that's the case. That's more of a sales and marketing issue than a pricing issue. And I'm sure you get that intuitively. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time explaining it. And then the third thing is just the value to the customer, especially the perceived value to the customer. So for consumer goods like Netflix, we'll go back to the streaming video example, this can be really hard. If I just invented Netflix and I didn't know what to charge, like personally, I think $20 a month for access to a library of thousands of like movies and TV shows is insanely underpriced. But in today's super competitive streaming video environment, could they get away with charging more? Probably not, because there's tons of competition. They're all locked into that price point. But for B2B products, I think this is actually really easy. First, you just figure out your average customers, like target return on investment or ROI. So the way that I think about this is pretty simple. You just start with a multiple. So we knew that in order for Harpoon to make sense for our customers, it has to generate more revenue than it costs on a monthly basis. Duh, right? Why would you buy something that costs you money and doesn't, you get it. Given that most agencies operate on a rev share basis, typically between like 25 to 50% of the model's net revenue every month, Harpoon would, on average, have to generate 2 to 4 times as much revenue, 2 to 4 times more revenue than it costs in order to be break even for our users. And we wanted to make Harpoon like a no-brainer, like you'd have to be retarded not to at least try it. So we ended up pricing at 5x ROI, meaning that if you paid for our highest subscription tier, which was Blue Whale at $2,000 a month, our goal was that you would make a minimum of $10,000 a month for as long as you used our product. And I think we only ever fell short of that for like 2 or 3% of our customers. We did a really good job there. In a perfect world, the best possible pricing solution, like if you can figure this out, awesome, kudos to you. The best possible pricing solution is one that updates in real time based on all of those conditions. So think of like Uber, where the price of an Uber changes based on your location, time of day, traffic, available drivers, so on. So our ideal pricing solution would have been one where we just like took a percentage of revenue from our leads generated from each user. But unfortunately, this would have been really difficult to implement on a technical level because it would require like manual reporting from our customers, which is annoying and inconvenient, or manual invoicing on our part, which is tedious and very difficult to scale. And then on top of that, like we could have asked for like inflow access, but I think that's kind of a weird, inappropriate ask from a customer. I wasn't comfortable doing that. Ideally, your best pricing solution is like flex pricing based on a bunch of different factors, but do the best you can. We ended up settling on a 3-tiered pricing system based on the number of Instagram followers that the model had, and that worked pretty well for us. Tiered pricing is pretty, people understand intuitively tiered pricing. It's more or less industry standard for software at this point. You just offer different prices based on some combination of, additional features or the size of the client's need or account or usage or whatever makes sense for your product. Just think about it in those terms. And then the final thing to think about pricing are promos and guarantees. I am not a huge fan of promotional pricing, especially for novel products, because your customer doesn't have a frame of, for something that's totally new, your customer doesn't have a frame of reference for how much the product should cost. In some ways, discounting just makes things a little bit more confusing and can potentially hamper your ability to increase prices in the future if you find out that you're underpricing. And some people are going to disagree with me on this. Some people are going to say, well, why don't you just double your price and then offer like a 50% introductory discount for new customers or something like that. I personally think that's kind of tacky. Price anchoring is good when you're using it on OnlyFans simps, but I made Harpoon for a class of person that I actually respect. And I didn't want to insult their intelligence with obvious promo ploys. So instead, we offered a guarantee. And the guarantee was very simple. If you don't make double your money on Harpoon leads within the first 30 days, you get a full refund. Simple as that. And I think that this was way more effective than discounting and way more attractive than discounting for 2 reasons. One, it totally de-risks it for new customers. And part of the challenge of creating something new is that people have no frame of reference for how effective it might be. And so setting it up in such a way that it was basically impossible for the customer to lose money makes that decision way easier. And then the second thing is offering a guarantee shows that we fully believe in our product. And it tells prospects, we have so much faith in our product that our bare minimum expectation is for you to double your money. And if you don't, you just get all your money back, no questions asked. So I like guarantees. Figure out a guarantee that works for your product. Lesson 3, marketing and customer education. And this is a big piece for Harpoon, especially for any new product. Everyone in OFM has some exposure to marketing concepts, paid ads, affiliate networks, organic social. These are things that work. There's no right or wrong answers. Just do what you know best to market your product. I decided early on that I wanted to do organic and word of mouth marketing to start. That's what I built my agency on. It's what I specialize in. It's what I'm most comfortable with. And I figured that if our product worked as well for other people as it had for us internally, word of mouth would bring us more customers than we knew what to do with. This is funny to think about in retrospect. In my mind, Harpoon was like a slam dunk. Every agency would want it. It spun off over $100,000 in revenue for my agency within the first 60 days of use. We were offering it at a super attractive price point with a guarantee that completely de-risked it for new customers. What kind of moron would not want something like that in their marketing stack? The problem is nobody knew what Harpoon was or even had a frame of reference to compare it to. Most people in OFM at first didn't understand the inherent value of surveying prospects or the power of direct email marketing that generates white hot leads because they'd never even thought about the problem that we were trying to solve. And OFM agencies are always looking for new traffic, but we weren't really a new traffic source per se. We were leveraging the model's existing socials to laser target a very small but very dedicated cohort of prospects. And that's kind of a complicated thing to communicate. If you're watching this, you're probably super smart and handsome and 6'4", and you intuitively understand the value proposition of Harpoon. But for everybody else who's not super smart and handsome like you, this is a huge barrier because you can't just assume that people are going to get it. So we had to sell the problem in addition to the solution. Luckily, I was really fortunate to score some early customers who were super happy with the product, delivered really awesome results for them, and they were willing to vouch for its efficacy publicly in a bunch of group chats. If any of you guys are watching that I'm talking about, thank you again. That was incredibly kind of you. You really helped us gain traction. Yeah, that helped us generate a ton of organic interest, but I still had to explain the problem and the product to all of the users that we onboarded. And I think one of the big lessons that I learned is this is the biggest downside of offering something that is truly new. You're not just advertising, you're educating. So I don't know, imagine you're trying to sell a Lamborghini to an Amazonian tribesman that's, 17 miles deep in the rainforest and he's never seen civilization before. From his perspective, his feet work just fine. It's never even occurred to him that he could get from point A to point B faster. He's never seen a road, let alone a car. It's going to be a tough sell. Thankfully, I already make educational content, so this is a type of challenge that I particularly enjoy. I made a short YouTube video explaining the product. It's still on this channel if you want to check it out for inspiration. And I also had a really detailed explainer page on Notion for all of our new prospects. And I think given enough time, we would have achieved enough market penetration and word of mouth support that people would begin to get the product intuitively without all of the fluff. But expecting in early days, expecting a prospect to watch a 6-minute video or read a full page doc is a kind of a big ask. Not everybody's going to be willing to do that. And that's a barrier that you're going to have to overcome if your product is novel. So my advice here for your product would be try to describe the problem and how you solve it as succinctly as possible. I'm leaving our website up. It's ofmharpoon.com. If you want, take a look at the copy on the homepage and tell me if you get it based on that copy in the comments below. Lesson 4 is user experience. And in my opinion, this is the single most important thing in today's business environment. How easy can you make the customer's life? As an entrepreneur, especially if you're doing B2B products, the last thing you want is to buy something that creates more work for you. The whole point of somebody else delivering a solution is that they're reducing your workload. So our customer experience could definitely have been a lot better. In my opinion, customer experience starts way before someone even purchases your product. I think customer experience starts at the top of the funnel. And the way that I think about UX is I kind of break it into 3 buckets. There's understanding, there's purchasing, and there's using. The understanding piece on our end was okay. I'd say we had a 6 out of 10. It required a lot of education. Some people still didn't get it after watching the YouTube video and reading the document, even the ones that took the time to do it. And I take full responsibility for that. If a customer doesn't understand your product, the failure is typically your ability to explain it, not the customer's comprehension, right? It's your job to communicate to the customer what the hell your product is. Purchasing, the second, aspect, I think was our worst suit by far. Normally, for most products, you can just have a static page or a Stripe or other payment links on your website. People can just click it and pay and automatically onboard. That's the ideal, obviously. The problem was for Harpoon, we had to vet our customers because not every model was a viable candidate for Harpoon. It was designed mostly for models who have a strong organic social presence. So we couldn't just have a static page where people paid only to be immediately rejected in the vetting process. We would have been issuing refunds nonstop, which would have made a bunch of work, and that could have caused problems with our payment processor. So the way that we did it is you had to fill out an application, after which I would like send you a Stripe link and an NDA and an onboarding doc on Telegram. It wasn't the worst, but it was definitely way more inconvenient than it should have. If your product's a little bit more plug and play, there's a million payment processors out there. Like, it's easier than ever to just get people to pay for your stuff in like, 1 or 2 clicks, and that should be your goal. But a quick note on that, do not be transparent with payment processors about the types of customers you serve or the nature of your business, because you will get blacklisted or debanked if Stripe or your bank finds out that you deal with adult industry adjacent stuff. They don't like that. It's actually one of the reasons we wound down, and I'll explain more about that later. As far as using the product, I think we did really well. Because all the client had to do once, the onboarding process was a little bit inconvenient, but once they were onboarded, all they had to do was add the link the link to the boyfriend application in their model's link in bio, and then just do a couple of Instagram reels or story posts promoting it. And for the most part, our customers just sat back and watched the subscribers roll in. But again, our onboarding process was clunky. It was very disjointed. It required a lot of manual effort on my part. Nobody ever complained about it, but it just required a lot of back and forth. Whatever your product is, the most important perspective is the customers. And you should always be optimizing for the best possible customer experience, especially if your business is subscription-based like Harpoon and it relies on repeat business. Lesson 5, last big lesson, is scale and hiring. Harpoon was always just, the goal, we wanted it to be just the two of us, me and my girlfriend. I handled sales and marketing. She built and maintained the tech stack. And we worked on ops stuff together. And we managed to get a lot done with a 2-person team. We took an idea, we tested it, we brought it to fruition, we productized it, and we generated over $1 million of value for our customers. And again, like $50K in our pockets. It's a humble business, but for like a little weekend project that we just, built just the two of us, I don't think we did bad at all. So if and when we spin Harpoon up again, if I wanted to achieve scale, if I wanted Harpoon to be as big as possible, the first thing I would do, this doesn't necessarily apply to you, the first thing I would do is hire like a hybrid sales customer service employee, basically like an account executive. Again, since we were a team of 2, I was the entire sales pipeline. So the selling and onboarding process was really hands-on. It required a lot more of my own personal time than would have been ideal. And if I were to do it over, I would just hire a decent account executive to pick up leads and handle sales and onboarding and customer service requests. And I would give that person a generous commission on all recurring revenue from all of the business that they closed. I would say a lesson here is, even if you build something as a hobby project, if it starts to pick up momentum, don't be afraid to hire support where it's needed. It might not be an account executive. Maybe it's going to be customer service for you. Maybe it's going to be some sort of specialist role. But don't be afraid to hire people. You can do it really cheaply nowadays with like Upwork and Fiverr, and you can find people that are at least somewhat competent that are going to be able to solve your problem. So there's way more lessons than that. We learned way more than I can just sort of spitball about, but those are the big ones that I wanted to cover for this video. Now, for why, obviously, like, I've just spent this time talking about how great an experience was, and like we made money and we made lots of money for our customers. So why are we winding down Harpoon? And the answer to that is we just got hit with a bunch of unfortunate shit all at once. If Harpoon was our primary source of income, we probably would have spent the time and the resources that were required to solve all of those issues. But again, since it was more or less like a hobby project, we just decided to sunset it and focus on other parts of the business. And maybe we'll come back to it someday. But for now, Harpoon is taking a little nap. So here's what went wrong. And these are things that may not ever happen to you. They're sort of unique to our business. One of them you are very likely to run into if you're not careful. So reason number 1, email marketing is feast or famine. It's amazing when everything works as intended. When everything's ticking, like you're just printing money, but it's completely worthless when it's not working. And for reasons that we still haven't been able to like accurately diagnose, we're still not 100% sure what went wrong. Our email deliverability on all of our email campaigns just absolutely tanked. We went from like 50, 60, 70% open rates to under 10% basically overnight. And we had to temporarily halt onboarding and suspend all of our active campaigns. So that happened. And if you know anything about email marketing, this is something that basically all companies who do email marketing deal with at some point, but we were not prepared for it. And that's on me. That's 100% on me. I have experience in this. I should have prepared more adequately. I knew that this could be a potential problem, but I just didn't put the preliminary work in. So we tried using other domains. We tried using other IPs. We hired a deliverability specialist, but basically nothing was working. And our best guess is kind of similar to what's happening right now on Instagram with these big sweeping ban waves and suspensions for OF creators. And it's not just Instagram. It's pretty much every major platform. We think that email service providers are like cracking down on adult activity due to the prevalence of stuff like romance scams, Nigerian prince type shit. And it's likely that some of the copy that we used in our emails kind of raised red flags or maybe shares some language that's common with romance scams, even though that's not what we were doing. Everything we were doing was totally legal and above board. We actually paid a lot of attention to regulatory stuff. Like we made sure that our emails were totally compliant. Didn't matter. We still got shit canned. If Harpoon was a major priority for us, I think the solution to this would probably have been to hire like a black hat developer to build our own adult-friendly email service provider with like rotating IPs and a selection of fresh domains to cycle through if reputation or deliverability went to shit on any one of them. But we just weren't willing to invest the time and the resources that would be required to build all of that out, at least not at this particular moment in time. And then the second reason, which some of you are probably all too familiar with, we got debanked. A few weeks ago, we got a notification from our banking partner that because of the nature of our business, we would have to transfer all of the funds out of the account and find another service provider. And this isn't that big of an issue. We could have just found another bank, but it happened like right after deliverability went to shit. And we just kind of took it as a sign, like, it's just time to put Harpoon on the back burner. So that's it. I just wanted to try a different format, something a little bit more casual. I wanted to share my product development story, and hopefully I inspired some of you to build something, or if you're already building something, hopefully you walked away from this with a better idea of how to approach it. If you like this more kind of informal, unpolished format, please like this video and tell me in the comments if you like it. Let me know what you liked about it, what you didn't, and I might make more. And really quick before I sign off, this channel, Intimate Underworld, is dedicated 100% to educational content, news, and interviews with professionals in the OnlyFans and digital intimacy industry. It is the single best source for information about this ecosystem on YouTube. So if you're hungry for good content in this space, if you're tired of seeing, a million other OFM YouTubers that are like, how to make $100,000 in 10 days with this model or whatever, stupid bullshit like that. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. It just helps grow the channel and it ensures that you do not miss any content that we put out. Thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.